First one is Youpla. There are a whole lot. My office has got a large number of questions about how the scheme is structured, who's in and who's out, and what the nature of the benefits are. Is someone in a position to give a very short sort of 1 minute summary, and then I'll ask some questions?
Yep. So Senator Julianne Guevara, Deputy CEO of the Policy and Programs at NIAA. Senator, as you know, I'll hand across to my colleague Shane Dexter, who is actually the branch manager responsible for this. But, of course, on the 11th of February, the government announced a $97 million commitment to an enduring resolution for people who were affected by the Youpla group. That scheme will actually start on the 1st of July this year. In a nutshell, basically, the scheme offers a funeral bond delivered by a prudentially regulated funeral bond provider. Eligible people can, in fact, opt out and receive a cash payment instead. The Youpla group policyholders are eligible if they want to actually receive financial counselling as well to make those decisions about whether they choose to take up the funeral bond or, in fact, receive a cash lump sum payment. The Youpla group policyholders are eligible if they were, in fact, an active policyholder from the August 2015. We think that
as at. If that's the critical date,
and
yes, prior,
and no, from that that date. And of course, the details of the program will be sort of forthcoming in the next few months.
Okay, it's been reported as saying the scheme will be open to anyone with an active policy at 1 August 2015. Active
on or after.
So at any time from 1 August 2015 to when it all fell over.
Yes.
Those policyholders are going to be covered.
Yes, and of course there has been the Treasury-run Youpla benefits program over the last it's since mid last year.
You put that interim policy in last year.
Yes, and so that will actually end at the 30th of June of this current financial year, and the new program takes over from there.
First of all, it is good to see the government move on this, and it's a substantial step change from the previous government who just refused to do anything, and I just want to acknowledge that. And the unfairness of doing of the previous government's policy, which left tens of thousands of First Nations peoples with no cover, was, I thought, unconscionable. So I just want to commend, if you had a hand in it, Minister, you and others, for getting this up and running. Can you explain what the funeral bond is?
I'll turn to my colleague.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Shane Dexter, Branch Manager for Business and Economic Policy, and thank you for the question. So, as my colleague said, that eligible policyholders, or once they're deemed eligible, will be able to opt for a funeral bond, which is different to a funeral insurance product. So Youpla offered funeral insurance. The bond that's available through the new program will be prudentially regulated and will essentially be money that's parked and earns interest that the policyholder could choose to continue to contribute to later if they wanted to, but is different to a funeral insurance product. Sorry, Senator.
So, no. So the bond means, under the insurance products, they had to keep paying every year to maintain the currency. And, of course, that was one of the predatory features of Youpla, which I won't go into. Under the bond scheme, if they don't make any further payments, the benefit will be retained, but it will only grow consistent with the interest or other earnings that investment has. So, but if there's an option, is there, if people want to continue to contribute, that they can also contribute. So is that what the bond is?
That's exactly correct, Senator. So they'll have a choice if they wish to add more money into the bond at a later time, but there'll be no requirement to do so. If they make no further payments after taking out the bond will be available when it's needed later on with the interest that's added.
All right. And the value of the bond, how is that going to be determined?
So the value of the bond would be equal to the amount that's available to the eligible participant under the resolution payment, which is equal to 60% of the premiums that policyholder had made over the life of their policy, but capped out at the amount that the value of the insurance product that they had purchased through Youpla.
All right. So, so it's 60% of the premiums they've paid in over the life of the policy.
That's correct.
Right? Is there any adjustment for inflation? Is there any adjustment for interest for that? Because some people have been paying in for 20 years. And so the payment they made 20 years ago, is that just going to be at the nominal payment that they made 20 years ago?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. So the program is not intended to repay or compensate people who are victims of the Youpla scheme. It is intended to be a resolution payment that takes account of the harm that people suffered through the administration of the former Youpla program. Government's objective was to seek to provide a resolution payment to the broadest number of people possible, hence the nomination of the date of the 1st of August as the on or after date that people would be eligible. It seeks to help eligible people recover from the collapse of the Youpla group and to give greater certainty for people that they can engage in sorry business, which was not able to be achieved because of the collapse of the group.
Yeah. I just can't read your name, Mr. Dexter.
Mr. Dexter.
Yeah, I thought it was Dexter. Sorry, Mr. Dexter. So I understand it's not been sold as you're not saying to people it's full compensation.
Correct.
And you're not pretending it's full compensation. I understand that. But my question was, I think answered, if I understand your answer, it's 60% of the nominal payments that people have made in. So if they made a contribution in $2,000, well, in year 2000 of $1,000, even though that in current, through inflation might actually be in current dollars a $1,500 payment, it's going to be booked in this scheme as a $1,000 payment.
If I understand your question correctly, that's right.
There's no adjustment for inflation.
There's not intended to be an adjustment for inflation.
And there's no adjustment for any interest that should have been earned over
Correct.
that time either.
Senator, if I could just jump in just for a minute there. That 60% was also because, we thought it was a fair decision because we were concerned that had it gone down a legal road, there would have been fewer people who would have been able to access or be a part of that. So there was a thinking around that, and I'm happy to provide further information to you on it. And in regards to the 2015, that was when the previous government took Youpla off centre pay, so they'd been aware then in 2015 about the concerns with Youpla, and they removed it off centre pay, which is why we've taken...
No, I understand the argument about 1 August being a date when you can clearly identify knowledge in the mind of the government and culpability to that extent. Like, if they took it off centre pay on 1 August 2015, they had to have a reason, and it probably was because Youpla were a bunch of unethical, bottom-feeding scumbags who were stealing money from First Nations peoples.
That's right.
Yeah, and the government knew that from the 1st of August 2015. We don't have time to go into the fact how multiple state governments and regulators and the Commonwealth Government probably knew well before 1 August 2015, but I understand the thinking about 1 August 2015. So it's 60% of the dollar figures that have been paid in.
Correct.
That's right. And there are a whole series of different pools. There are a whole series of different insurance pools that Youpla had. Does the scheme cover all of the different insurance pools?
So there was 4 different schemes that Youpla were running at different times, and the program does cover policies that were issued under all 4, yes.
And it's the same policy for each of them?
Yes.
The same response for each of them?
Yes.
And Minister, you were I think about to articulate how the 60% figure was arrived at.
Oh, look, I was just saying more broadly that it was around the concerns that people may not have been able to access any support. And we thought 60% was fair, but I'm happy to provide some further documentation for you around that.
Now, do we have an understanding of just how many policyholders there were? How many people are affected by this?
Yeah, we understand the approximate number is 13,700 people who will receive a benefit. We are still working with the liquidators to get the full set of data from the collapsed group. That work continues, and so the actual number will become clearer once we've got a hold of that data.
And does that include people who may have tragically been deceased between 1 August 2015 and now and didn't get a benefit?
Yes, it does.
Do we know how many?
Unfortunately, at this stage we don't, Senator, but once we have the data from the liquidator will be in a better position to be able to calculate that.
Did Centrebay give you their data? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I'd need to take that question on notice, Senator.
And if families have lost a loved one and they've been buried in a pauper's funeral because they couldn't get a benefit, what's going to happen to them? What are they?
Senator, so if they held an active policy on or after the 1st of August 2015 and they haven't received a benefit, they will receive a resolution payment.
And that'll go to the estate or the beneficiary.
The beneficiary, yes. There is a question about the beneficiary of the policy versus the beneficiary of the deceased estate. That's yet to be determined.
Okay.
That's likely to be a fringe issue, but that's something we'll need to confirm.
And then how will the 13-odd thousand families and policyholders, how will they access the benefit? Are you going to actively reach out to them? Are there resources set aside to do that?
There absolutely are resources set aside to do that. So there will be, from the 1st of July, people will be able to register and make an application, but certainly there will be an active reaching out as well once the program is underway.
And is there somewhere that people can go now to find this information and register now?
They're able to reach out. So there is a 1-800 number, and we've got a website that's up and running that the NIAA is administering. People who are interested are able to sign up to receive email updates about as the program stands up on the 1st of July. Unfortunately, at this stage, given that we don't have all of the data from the liquidator, we're not in a position to advise people specifically about their individual eligibility at this time, but we certainly can provide some broad information about the scheme, and they can sign up to receive further updates.
And do you have any update on where that appalling human being, Ron Pattenden, is, who skimmed $20 million out of the scheme and last I heard was on a yacht in Vanuatu?
I have no information. I'd need to take that question on notice, Senator.
All right. Can I just ask one other quick question, Chair?
Yes,